Welcome to First Byte, our Detroit Lions preview podcast. It is week 3. Time to turn that page on the Seattle Seahawks game and look forward here to the Atlanta Falcons coming to Detroit this week. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I am the producer over at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online on Twitter. With me as always to help break down this upcoming game is senior editor of Pride of Detroit, is the Rock God, is at Ryan_POD, Ryan Matthews. How we doing, buddy?
Doing well, Jeremy. Anytime you say turn the page, it evokes the spirit of Bob Seger. And you know what? The Lions are running against the wind right now. And they'll have to turn things, dust those old records off the shelf, so to speak, right?
Listen, if Dan Campbell's the head coach of this team, you have to respect the Metallica version of Turn the Page. I'm sorry.
This is true. I'm glad you brought this full circle. And you know what else brings us full circle? Our guest.
That's right. And that, man, what a good segue. And I'm ruining it by acknowledging it. He is the beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons via ESPN, formerly the Lions beat writer for ESPN. He is at Mike Rothstein on Twitter. Mike Rothstein is here. Welcome back, buddy.
Hi, guys.
Hey. Coming in with energy.
I was trying to do like the hello Nick from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
But I
Hi, Dr. Rothstein.
Listen, I have no honorific in front of my name. It is not journalist Rothstein or reporter Rothstein or,
Not yet.
There are some honorifics that probably people would like to put in front of my name. However, none of them are official. Last I checked.
All right. Well, we'll check the birth certificate later. Mike, let's get into this matchup. As much as I'd like to just chat about everything with you for the next 45 minutes, we do have a football game to talk about. And as we always do, we're going to start with the opponent's offense first. I don't know if that's what we always do, but that's what we're doing now.
Hey, listen, it's a relevant game for once, Jeremy.
Yeah, for both
most of the time when these two teams play, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's exciting. And maybe it's just because it's week 3. Maybe if this was played in week 17, both of these teams might not be relevant. I'm willing to bet that they both will be, though. Because
I actually think they will, although the Lions have a lot of injuries right now.
True.
And, that would be very concerning to me if I were a Detroit Lions fan. But yeah, no, I think these two teams are going to be relevant all year long. I think we may end up. I'm going to even throw one prediction out there. I'm going to even say I think we may end up doing this again here in January.
Ooh, I like that. You're getting ahead of yourself here. We're not making predictions yet. Let's talk about the Falcons offense.
No, that's there'll be many predictions made in this podcast, Jeremy.
That's a freebie.
All right. Falcons. Arthur Smith, year 3. Same with Terry Fontenot. It's very much in the Lions situation. Year 3 with the general manager, with the head coach. How close, I guess, is the vision, is particularly of Arthur Smith's offense, to being what he wants it to be now that they're in year 3?
Yeah, it's pretty close, guys. Certainly closer than at any other point. Now, Arthur Smith is a guy, and we've seen it. That's why, they've run the ball a lot the first 2 weeks, but I don't anticipate that that's going to be what they do all year long, although they have the players to do so in Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. But Arthur Smith has shown he can be versatile, right? Like in his first year with Matt Ryan and kind of, Calvin Ridley for like 3 weeks and Russell Gage for a little bit. But yeah, Matt Ryan, they threw the ball a ton. They threw the ball like 550, 600 times, something like that. Then last year with Marcus Mariota, who was not an accurate quarterback, they more than doubled. They just ran because their offensive line was really good, and they could really, any rusher they put back there was successful. This year is more of a hybrid of both. But the biggest thing, and I wrote about this last week on ESPN.com, Arthur Smith has been all about positional versatility, or as I call it, a position agnostic offense. And what that means is take all the positions that we know, running back, wide receiver, tight end. You can take them, you can throw them in the trash bin at the bottom of your laptop, because they're not really looking at it like that. Like, basically what it is they look at guys and they say, we're going to put that guy in the best mismatch position to succeed. So if you look at like how they've played offensively, it is very much a situation where they'll use kind of the same 5 core guys, the mix match a couple other guys in depending on sets or whatever. Like Keith Smith, their fullback, has gotten a lot of run last week, sometimes depending on matchup. but they'll use the same 5 guys, but put them everywhere. Like Bijan Robinson has lined up in week 1. He lined up in the backfield 20 times. He lined up out wide, I think like 6. He lined up in the slot like 12, and he lined up in the spot that would be kind of an offset tight end spot position a couple of times as well, even though he's not, even thought of as a tight end. Like that's kind of what they do. They do a Jonnu Smith who's lined up all over the place. The only guy in their offense that when he's on the field lines up in kind of one place and one place only is Tyler Algier. He lines up almost all the time in the backfield. Everyone else can kind of line up a little bit everywhere, and they do that for 2 reasons. One, it becomes really hard for defensive coordinators to figure it out and how they want to put personnel on the field, because so often personnel they want to match, right?
Yep.
Well, they have 5 guys in reality, and you can even maybe say 6 or 7, that can play enough different positions that it becomes really hard to do that. They can, depending on the personnel, they can go from jumbo to empty with the same 5. There's not many teams in the league that can do that. And that's something that gives them leverage and gives them deception and becomes really hard. It basically puts, as Sean McVay put it to me a year ago when I started asking him about kind of the concepts of this, it puts people in a quote guessing game. And that's when you win. That's when you get, offensively or defensively, that's what you are trying to do. And Atlanta has the personnel, I think, more than any team in the league. San Francisco might be the only other one that has the personnel to really do that all over the place.
Well, Mike, you brought up his name. It's Bijan Robinson's world, and I think we're all just living in it at this point. And I know it's early, but like, what aspects of his game does he seem to have a firm grasp on this early in the season? And where do you see him kind of just scratching the surface of his potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a clear grasp on everything, guys. He does. He's I've said this on a couple different places. So since I was last with you, I now am a fill-in host on ESPN Radio nationally, and we've talked about Bijan Robinson there. I did another podcast that I won't name because out of respect to you guys earlier this week, and I said it there. And I'll say it again. There's 2 guys in my career that I have covered that every day I'm like, wow. Like every dang day when I watch practice and training camp and even sometimes, I mean, regular season's individual, but every game you sit there at least once and you go, wow. The other guy you guys know very well, you can probably guess who that was. Drug Bell, clearly. No, that was Calvin Johnson.
No, I was going to say Avion Kaysen. That's close enough.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, listen, my guy Chris Durham, awesome.
We could do this all day.
Hey, Chris is doing really well for himself, by the way, in retirement. But was Calvin Johnson. Watching Bijan Robinson every day in camp, he just does things, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, how is that possible? And I've said this a couple of other places, and I'll say it again here. If he stays healthy, and that's the if with all of this, right? If he stays healthy, he's getting fitted for a jacket, whether that's a red jacket for their Ring of Honor in the Falcons or the one that Calvin Johnson has now. Although I guess technically he has the blue one for is gray, silver, blue, whatever their one is, or the gold one. I think he gets there. He is that special. Like some of what he's able to do is, I just haven't. There was one play in training camp. And it was the day that I kind of was like, all right, I'm going to go out on a massive limb and start saying this. He cut right. It looked like it was in slow motion. He like put his foot in the ground and then bloop, went left middle right away. And I was just like watching this, and I'm like, he is moving at the same speed as everybody else, but it looks like he's moving like faster than everyone else. Like he gets the edge faster than everyone. He has like body control like Neo from Matrix at time to time. Like, I mean, it's just, you watch what he does and you just kind of say, I don't know how physically or physically that is possible.
I think that's a good way to put it. I want to move on from Bijan only because I think it's going to rile up our fans a little bit. It's riling up me a little bit.
If I make the comparison that I've
don't
made
do it
once this week,
don't do it.
I know it's blasphemous around here.
The man's got a statue, Mike. You can't do it. You can't do it.
No, he does. Listen, I'm not putting him in that same category yet. But no. I mean, LaDainian Tomlinson's another really good example of that. Like, is that he's the type of guy that runs like that.
Right.
And there's very few guys that run like that.
Yeah.
So that's my point in saying that. I mean, the first comparison I made of him was Darren Sproles, but like 160% Darren Sproles, and that's not a knock on Darren Sproles. He had a hell of a career, but my point is like, he is a runner like that. And you'll see it. There'll be one play, maybe two, that you'll just be like, how? Like 2 games, there's been like 2 or 3 of them, and you just sit there and you're like, his first touchdown, you're like, so you caught a swing pass out of where he went from, by the way, slot and finished before the snap at tight end after going across the formation and back. So it goes to that positional versatility. Catches a swing pass that 99% of backs in the league would have gotten blown up on. Back jukes the guy. So make him miss. Then runs forward, basically breaks 2 tackles and gets in the end zone. And you're like, huh? And then last week, he juked 3 different guys. And then also a play that kind of went unnoticed that was the one that I was like, are you like mid-run? He just saw a Green Bay defender falling in front of him, and he just he jumped over him like it was like he was like Super Mario, I mean, that's just what it was. I was like, are you kidding me here?
Yeah, I'll admit it's fun watching him do that to Packers players. I'm okay with it just being like one good play this week. But let me talk about Desmond Ridder here a little bit, because you mentioned it's a pretty complicated offense where moving pieces are all over the place and anyone can play anywhere. It seems like maybe a heavy load on someone as untried, I guess, as Desmond Ridder. So how has he handled that? Given that he had 4 games that he finished the season with last year, and now he's 2 games into this. How is he able to, I guess, take on such an interesting role?
I think he's handled it well. Listen, there's been inconsistencies there. He threw 1 interception against the Packers. Kenny Clark hit him right in the chest as he was throwing. And as you guys well know, if Kenny Clark hits you in the chest, that's probably not, A, it doesn't feel good. B, that ball is probably not going where you want it to. But he had 2 others. I mean, like Jair Alexander dropped a easy interception. Quay Walker dropped a little bit of a higher degree of difficulty interception. So there are passes he's thrown that you're like, oh, that's not a good throw. And you're like, oh, where were you going here? There's definitely that learning curve, that inconsistency, but he's handled getting in and out of the offense pretty well. Now, we obviously don't know all of the checks and all of what he's supposed to be putting them into or not putting them into, but I have not heard anyone say publicly or privately, oh, it's not going well, he's not handling it. It seems like he's handling it okay, but there's an understanding that there's going to be a learning curve here, and I imagine there'll be another one, because I don't know if he's been in an environment quite like the one that I'm anticipating on Sunday, the one that Jeff Okuda also, by the way, anticipating on Sunday.
Oh, we'll get to him.
Based off of what I've seen and what I've seen in 14 and 16, when the Lions were actually good when it covered them, with the rare times it was. I'm curious how he's going to handle that. Now, he had his first start on the road at the Superdome in a rivalry game, and that place can get very, very loud. But both those teams were kind of like around, kind of still relevant, but not like this game theoretically could be on Sunday. I'm curious to see how he handles that. There's inconsistency there, but he's handled it well. And the other part of it, I would say, is last week they ran him a lot more on some design runs, some zone reads, which again, when it's Bijan in the backfield and it's a zone read, like Desmond Ridder's touchdown run where he booted out left, 2 things there. One, they set it up earlier where they had a Bijan run at the goal line where they gave it to Bijan, and Bijan actually got stuffed. And that helped set it up. But also the fake was so good. I was watching, and I watch these guys all the time. I ended up watching Bijan because that's how good the fake was. And then all of a sudden I heard cheering, and I'm like, he just got hit. What's going on? And I'm like, oh, Desmond Ridder has the ball. Like that. So that's all to say. Listen, they're doing a lot to manage him right now in terms of, like, he's not throwing the ball deep a lot. When he has the deep balls could be a lot better. He's learning. Yeah. I don't think it's anywhere close to what they're hoping it can be from him and in this offense, but he's definitely showing signs of improvement. And the one thing that he really does have which is similar to a guy you guys know well, and Matthew Stafford was, even you guys know this better than anybody. Stafford could be awful for 3 quarters. And then they're in the game, and magically Matthew Stafford becomes like the third best quarterback in the league in the fourth quarter. Desmond Ridder has shown in the fourth quarter of games he has that level of it quality, of clutch gene, if you want to call it that, even though that's not really a thing. Sian Bialik wrote a book about choking, and it talks a lot about that clutch gene. I highly recommend you read it. She's actually the president of Dartmouth now. But you see that, and he just has that innate winning quality of, if he has the ball at the end of the game, there's good reason to believe he's going to get it done. And you can't teach that. But the other 3 quarters, there's a reason they're outscoring opponents 27-0 in the fourth quarter, but those first 3 quarters have been rough. And the first quarter specifically, like, if the Lions can jump out early, that's where it'll be really interesting how much pressure that puts on Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, and to Mike's point too, I think maybe on my most recent check, I think earlier today when Jeremy and I were going back on Jared Goff statistics, Desmond Ridder's up there in terms of like turnover worthy plays as far as quarterbacks in the league. So that'll be something to definitely keep an eye on this week. Mike, I have to check in. I'm legally, morally obligated to check in on Kyle Pitts. And there's just a couple of pass catchers that are on the brink seemingly of breaking out, right? I mean, Drake London is a high draft pick. Kyle Pitts is a high draft pick. Right now, while the team is winning and everything is rosy, all things are great. But you look at, London has 6 catches, Pitts has 4 catches. How and where do those guys fit in this kind of like position agnostic offense? You know what I mean? And how do they fit into this like more ground oriented offense at times?
They're both. London specifically is a really good blocker, which, for fantasy people, they're like, that's the last thing I want to hear is that Drake London's a great blocker. They both fit in pretty well. They really do. Drake London, when he played with Desmond Ridder last year, was incredibly effective. Right now we're working, to me, this season with a small sample size, because the other thing that happened in week 1 was Brian Burns and Derek Brown made the Falcons' lives miserable in the first quarter and a half. So the Falcons had to change their game plan. They had to go away from any sort of intermediate or deep passing, because if they did that, Derek Brown and Brian Burns were going to eat Desmond Ridder. That had happened a couple of times. Chris Lindstrom's one of the, if not the best guard in the NFL. And Derek Brown folded him up one play. I've covered Chris Lindstrom for 2+ seasons. I've never seen that happen. Those guys were just on point, figuring it out. And that changed a little bit of what Atlanta was going to do. Kyle Pitts, teams are paying a lot of attention to him, but there was one play, it was in week 1 again. It was like a 26, 30-yard game that got wiped out by a penalty. And that one play alone probably changes how people are looking at Kyle Pitts from a statistics standpoint at this right now. So all of that said, I'm not worried about those guys yet. Come back to me in a couple of weeks. If Kyle Pitts is still putting up no numbers in a couple of weeks, I think there's reason to really wonder what's going on there. Drake London, I think, is fine. It's 6 for 67 last week and a touchdown. You get that from him most weeks, you're probably pretty happy. The thing that, to me, that I look at is targets, and they had five guys that Desmond Ridder targeted last week. All those guys got at least 5 targets. So it's not like it's a 2-target game, a 1-target game like it was for Drake London in the opener. And that was the other thing too. Carolina doubled Drake London the whole game. So they basically were like, we're taking Drake London out of this offense, beat us with everybody else. And I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to see teams pick the guy or 2 guys that they want to eliminate from the offense, and basically say, all right, your other 3 guys, 4 guys, if Cordero Patterson maybe plays, make those guys beat you. And so far that's worked for the Falcons, but at some point it's probably going to become problematic because Desmond Ridder's not trying to necessarily force throws, and because he doesn't have to, because of the amount of pass catchers that they have. And that was part of why they built this the way they did, was if you have a quarterback that's giving you average quarterback play, you have enough offensive options that you can go to the open guy over and over again, whoever that is. And that's how you move the ball down the field. And that's really what they've done.
Last thing before we take our break here, obviously here in Detroit, there's been a lot of talk this week about the defensive line. And this Falcons offensive line, particularly as a run blocking unit, is one of the best in the NFL. You mentioned Chris Lindstrom, but I'm curious if you think there is maybe a weak link amongst the group, whether it's as a run blocker, as a pass blocker. Lions obviously trying to create a little bit of pressure here on a young inexperienced quarterback. Is there an opportunity this week to get to Ridder?
I think that there would be, Caleb McGarry is a really, really good run blocker. He's not that great against them in pass pro. I think that's why when he was a free agent last year, you saw he didn't maybe get the money a lot of people thought he might, because there are questions about his pass protection. He ended up coming back to Atlanta on a pretty reasonable deal. I think a deal that worked out for both sides. That's one area that I think there's some exposure. Matthew Bergeron has not played in a road environment yet in the NFL. And he's a rookie left guard. So far, he's done really well, but he's also had 5 games now, really 4 games as a left guard, because he, he's a rookie and he was a tackle at Syracuse. And moved over. He had like 2 plays at the Senior Bowl or whatever, like a day of practice at the Senior Bowl at guard. Ends up being a second round pick. He's handled himself quite well, but at some point there's going to be a learning curve thing for him there too.
Yeah.
And those would be the 2 spots. I mean, Jake Matthews is really solid against the run in the pass. Chris Lindstrom is one of the best guards in the NFL. And Drew Dahlman's played, I think, much better this year than he did a year ago. And he's their center, and that helps as well. But I mean, Dahlman can be gotten as well. That's those would be where it is. But they've largely, other than that first half against Carolina, I thought handled themselves well, pass blocking and run blocking. But they're definitely a better run blocking unit than pass protecting unit, because all 5 of those guys are high level run blockers.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to switch things up, talk about the Lions offense versus a Falcons defense with a lot of new pieces, including one very familiar piece. We'll get to that when we come back here on First Byte with ESPN's Michael Rothstein.
What's going on, guys? Miko here from Pride of Detroit. Thanks for taking the time to check out this clip from our most recent POD live stream. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see where the conversation went from here, all you have to do is click the link in the description that'll take you over to our Twitch channel. And once you're on our Twitch channel, be sure to drop us a follow or subscribe if you're so inclined. That way you can be notified anytime we go live and be a part of our live audience, which means that you may be privy to content that doesn't always make it onto the audio version of the podcast or even onto YouTube. Also, if you're more inclined and you prefer an audio version of our live streams, you can click the links to both Spotify or Apple Music, which will take you to their platform, and you can download the entire audio version of the podcast and listen to it whenever you want to. Again, we appreciate you guys and thank you for the support. Be sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to this channel if you're new, and we will be sure to keep bringing you amazing Lions content.